Trump is in trouble. Now, that's something I've been saying for a long time now, but Trump is in a bed of his own making. And that's something that happens when you are a pathological liar and a two-bit crook, which Trump is both of those things. But why am I saying this now? It's not because of the multiple investigations against him. At current, there are 6 investigations against him that could end his presidency, and that's before we get into sexual misconduct cases that are still active against him. But he's freaking out about this op-ed that the New York Times reported. Now, it's not even the fact that it's on the heels of the book by Woodbridge. They were always going to throw that down. They were always going to use the line of, well, you know, you didn't actually meet with Trump, so it doesn't count. Of course they were. But the fact that this op-ed comes out and says everything that the book says is true, the fact that it confirms rumors, the fact that it basically repeats everything we've heard from the last 2 years. Trump is incompetent. Trump is unstable. Trump doesn't think that far ahead. In fact, Trump doesn't think half a step in front of him. Trump only serves his ego. That's it. And we've seen this time and time again with North Korea. He went to the summit and he was already saying that it was a win and it was a victory. And that was before he actually sat down with Kim Jong-un. So before he met with the dictator, he was praising the dictator and gave away all the bargaining chips. So of course, North Korea have just carried on with what they were doing. In fact, if anything, they've amped things up. In fact, recently, this week, a story came out that a North Korean hacker, on obviously the behalf of the North Korean government, has hacked into one of the systems in America. And then we find out that North Korea have actually hacked into the central bank of Bangladesh and taken quite a bit of money. Trump defends North Korea because North Korea, Kim Jong-un, said something flattering about him. That's how easy it is. That is how incompetent and mentally unstable the US president is. And this op-ed goes in to say, look, we don't want to impeach him. In fact, we agree with a lot of the policies that he's put out, but we are in control of this. America needs to know there are adults in the room. Meaning Trump is a baby and he needs constant supervision. We like what he's doing, but we're stopping him from causing long-term damage. Well, I disagree with that part because look at the economy. At the moment, it seems to be doing okay, but you've cut education, you've practically destroyed any chances of universal healthcare. You've just constant attacks on the Environmental Protection Agency. Even though Scott Pruitt has gone, the guy who has replaced him is doing just as bad a job. And I say just as bad a job, as far as they're concerned, they're doing fantastic. But their goal is not to protect the environment. Their goal is to destroy all regulations that stop companies from destroying the government. Flint, Michigan still has an obscene amount of lead in its water that is making people go blind. And the stories just go on and on and on. There were protests at Standing Rock because the locals there didn't want this oil pipeline. And what happened? Now, admittedly, this was during Obama's time, but the police essentially attacked the protesters with freezing cold waters from the water trucks. That water, the pressure behind that is strong enough to break bones. And yet the Trump administration now is treating those protesters with the same label as terrorists. So they are now under constant supervision because they dared stand up for their environment. In reality, this op-ed has said nothing that we didn't already know. Now, of course, Standing Rock was Obama, but this new policy of treating protesters as terrorists, essentially, is the Trump administration. Taking children away from parents is the Trump administration. ICE should be abolished. It's not because America doesn't have a right for border security. They have border security. It's called border security. ICE is a separate thing that is destroying families. And they're not just going after illegal immigrants, they're going after legal immigrants. They're going essentially after everyone who isn't white. And in a lot of cases, this story came up recently. During the 50s, I believe, the 40s and 50s, there were a number of midwives along the Mexico border who forged birth certificates. So you were born in Mexico, you were Mexican, but you have a forged birth certificate saying that you're American. Now, governments since then, American governments since then, have all said, look, we just don't know. We can't tell the forgeries from the legit copies, so it's just one of those things, we have to deal with it. But now the Trump administration is picking up people who aren't white and saying, well, we're not entirely sure that you're a legitimate American citizen, so we might deport you. And they go to these detainment centers. The Flora settlement in the 90s was very, very clear. You cannot keep children, you cannot take children away from their parents. You cannot keep children indefinitely, which is something that the Trump administration have done and want to do. And numerous judges have said to the Trump administration, no, you need to find these families now. You cannot keep children in cages the way you have been doing. And what has the Trump administration been doing? Ignoring what the judges are saying. There are at least 446 children who are orphaned because Donald Trump, Jeff Sessions, Stephen Miller came up with this zero tolerance policy, which took children away from their parents and didn't record anything. First off, if you take a 3-year-old away from their family, you're a disgusting human being. But the fact that they went one step further and didn't bother taking any names, didn't bother keeping any records, forcing these children to be orphaned, when a lot of these parents have now been deported, is obscene. And then Stephen Miller goes one step further, saying that these children have to represent themselves in court. I wish this was a joke, but a 3-year-old was taken to court and had to represent themselves. Thankfully, the judge said how monumentally ridiculous it was, but the fact that Stephen Miller, who is the architect of this zero tolerance bill, Donald Trump, Jeff Sessions pushed for it constantly, but Stephen Miller is the guy who read out the finer details. The fact that they would push forward the notion of a 3-year-old having to represent themselves in court is absolutely vile. And that sums up Donald Trump and his reign as president. He is a vile human being. He is a misogynistic, he is racist, he is sexist, he is every horrible thing you can think of. And his policies are absolutely disgusting. But this op-ed said, hey, no, we like a lot of these policies, we just don't like Trump. And that's what's driving him crazy. He's called it treason, he's called it everything else, but it's not. There is a difference between the office and the man occupying the office. If it was an attack on America itself, then you could say it's treasonous. If it was saying that, if it was inciting action against the US government, then yes, that would be treasonous. But this isn't. This is saying very clearly a lot of the policies we like, We just don't like Trump, and America should know there are adults in the room keeping Trump under wraps. That's what drives him crazy, because its ego just can't stand it.